Photosynthesis is fundamental for the life of the planet. Today we know it is entirely quantum. The capture of solar energy and CO2 from the air to transform inorganic matter into organic matter occurs through the effect on the phenomenon of tunneling in chloroplasts. In short, it's complete quantum biology.
Afternoon. I would like to know your opinion, or if you have reached a conclusion about the meaning of life. That is to say, you mentioned earlier that we are born, don a suit, live our lives, and then give it back. I would like to know if you have a conclusion or an opinion about this. Why live?
Good question. Because after what these sick people say, one asks, why am I born? I stay on the other side and live peacefully. Your point is very logical. I don't know if you know or have read anything about Teilhard de Chardin. Have you heard of him? A Jesuit, very evolved. For ideas, he was close to being expelled. They wanted to kick him out of the church. He was banished. They wanted him out. They blocked his publications. He was a very important theologian who studied human evolution as a Jesuit, and his principles do not contradict the Church's teachings. He expresses it very well. What is the purpose of our life? Why are we here? We come to discover existence, not to have or to do. Being is consciousness. Doing or having belongs to our ego identity. According to Teilhard de Chardin, the purpose of life is to begin at the alpha point, full of impurities, from the ego, and to remove them until we arrive at the omega point, which is holiness, Buddhahood, or enlightenment in Eastern philosophies. This is our life's purpose. In essence, it's a game made for us. We are placed inside our true identity, which is divine, within a body that deceives us. And our purpose is precisely to discover our true identity that is covered, it is, by the ego. This is our goal. I can guarantee that when you uncover your supraconsciousness, you can become as happy as those who have had a near-death experience in another dimension. Live. Reaching the supraconsciousness offers great happiness, as I previously stated, akin to what they show by patients in near-death experiences.
Doctor, here. To your right. Here. To your left.
Oh, sorry. This is
How's
the
it
left
going?
side.
Well, the truth is, thank you first for this wonderful talk. I am also a nephrologist and wanted to ask you. Doctor, perfect. Colleague.
Colleague.
Yes, colleague. That's correct. I wanted to ask you if beyond physical death, as you mentioned, or through meditation, is it possible that one, when going to sleep, makes contact with this superconsciousness? This is the first time I'm mentioning this, but as a child, even with EKGs, electroencephalograms under study, because there were such experiences. Could it be that when we sleep, one experiences this? I never found an explanation from a medical standpoint. But the talk was fantastic. Thank you.
Tough question, right? Look, you know that dreams are expressions of our subconscious. Freud's subconscious, in the subconscious, is part of our history. It's what we carry with us when, in our evolution, we take the subconscious along with our history. It's what Eastern philosophy refers to as karma, the cause and effect link. Can we reach out through dreams? Yes. There are dreams, even lucid dreams that allow you to connect with the superconscious. Look, the Dalai Lama, you have heard of him, is the spiritual head of Tibetan Buddhism. He is a man who promotes, with fervor, quantum science in human beings, which I have explained to you. You know, there is a new discipline that Einstein spoke about. Schrödinger also wrote in a lovely book that asks, what is life? And finally, Jordan, this new discipline is quantum biology. There is quantum biology. The Dalai Lama was asked by some highly evolved lamas capable of contacting their superconsciousness, even to project themselves, to make astral travels that they can do, these highly evolved people, if they could study them electroencephalographically, to track the evolution of these lamas. The Dalai Lama agreed. This was done at the University of Wisconsin. An EEG study took place. It was noted that these lamas, in baseline conditions, exhibited normal electroencephalograms similar to ours. Like any person with the five, as we know, you and I know, the 5 types of waves depend on the moment and the person's state of consciousness. Then they said to train in a state of deep meditation. I've meditated. And because I enjoy science, I practice meditation just as they did, using an electroencephalogram placed on my little head. That is to say, to see what happens with my electroencephalogram. It looks great. You ride waves, theta to alpha waves. Very clear. It changes the EEG. When you enter a deeper state, the deeper you go, the more you shift to theta. You don't reach a REM. From theta onward, they begin the out-of-body experience. In other words, they connect with the supraconsciousness. Then, a tremendous gamma activity is observed. In short, the highest brain activity is intense when they astral project. Stays, the EEG is nearly stopped. In other words, the unfolding is its non-local consciousness. They do the same as a patient with clinical death, where their non-local consciousness detaches and explains quantum physics and all phenomena. They do this willingly. They detach and leave from their body, which can be seen on the EEG. Thank you, colleague.
Indeed. Doc, here, 2, left, right here.
Look, it is...
The question is, under your consideration, do you think the first consciousness or supraconsciousness, is it absolute or evolving? Given that we are co-creators of the universe, as you mentioned earlier, is that consciousness or supraconsciousness absolute, meaning it does not allow for evolution, or is it evolutionary? Are we co-creating and adding even more consciousness to that supraconsciousness?
Very good question. The supraconsciousness is holistic with the primary consciousness. The primary consciousness outside the universe we cannot comprehend or define. Because if we try to define the primary consciousness, we box it in with our limitations. It is beyond our comprehension, and our superconsciousness is holistic in relation to this primary consciousness. It is perfect in all respects. What happens is that our local consciousness evolves, determining our future karma and our history. How are they connected? I wonder if you've heard of Roger Penrose's fascinating work, Nobel Prize winner in 2020 for his work on black holes. Then Stuart Hameroff, a psychiatrist and anesthetist at the University of Arizona, USA. They refer to microtubules. Microtubules are the microstructure, the cytoskeleton of eukaryotic cells in neurons, featuring a helical structure formed by a protein, alpha and beta tubulin. And it is exactly within these microtubules where the superconsciousness connects with local consciousness. In other words, it is where quantum transfer occurs between our supraconsciousness and local consciousness. Our brain and local consciousness, which evolves and is influenced, is your identity, the ego, the local consciousness, is likened to an interface. Our brain is like a television set. A television set receives electromagnetic waves of information from studios and transforms this information into image and sound. our brain and local awareness receives flawless information from the supraconsciousness via microtubules, from Roger Penrose, transforming it. This is where our superconsciousness links with our consciousness. This is clearly shown today. Clearly. Initially, there was a lot of debate about Roger Penrose and Stuart Hameroff's explanation, but today, you know that quantum biology is completely accepted. For instance, we now know that photosynthesis, crucial for life on Earth, is completely quantum. The capture of solar energy and CO2 from the air to transform inorganic matter into organic matter occurs through the effect in the chloroplasts via the tunneling phenomenon. In other words, it is complete quantum biology. Genetic mutations, nerve transmission in synaptic connections, smell, the role of ferritin, the protein that converts iron, the migratory movements of animals that no one can explain. It is pure quantum biology. The red pity has been explained. In other words, quantum biology increasingly explains this connection between our supraconsciousness and our local consciousness, which is the actual manifestation of our material identity linked to the ego, evolving over a lifetime. I'm not certain I answered your question.
Hello, good night.
Good night.
Here on your right, in the balcony.
Where?
Here.
Here? There?
Do you see me? Yes.
Oh, here. Excuse me. Sorry.
It's nothing, no problem. Good night. Well, I am a survivor of ECM.
Please come closer.
I am a survivor of ECM. Okay? But in my case, theoretically, there was no danger of death. All right? In my case, it was during a priest's canonization in a cathedral or a church. I'm not Christian, okay? Not Christian or religious, like a survivor myself. ECM, I have no faith. But I went to that church because of the same intuition that something would happen, and it did, okay? I simply passed out. The story is long, I won't elaborate now, but I fainted and instantly crossed over to the other side. My experience is exactly as you described, just like the studies. But there was no death risk. There wasn't theoretically, right? Similarly, I might have had a heart attack and not noticed. But theoretically, I only was going through some phases of various situations. And I found myself on the other side, right? I also wanted to stay, but they said it wasn't my moment and sent me back here again. So my question is, do you know, after everything studied, do you know others like me? I've been researching since I was 17 and I don't know anyone else like me who had an experience from the canonization of a priest, because the priest told me it was a mystical experience and the Vatican had evidence of it and such, but I don't know anyone else. And if you know more, why? The reason why?
I agree that you had a near-death experience. I have explained the experience to them. Bruce Grayson researched this extensively. A psychiatrist from the University of Virginia in the US, one of the most knowledgeable about NDEs, studied it for many years, a long time ago. I've shared a very typical case, very characteristic with all the elements, but there are ways to initiate the NDE. The evolution, the number of factors, not all are alike. That is to say, they all have very typical characteristics, which are logical, that one transcends, is conscious, feels a sense of well-being, lights, etc. It's more or less visible, but they can be partial or local, and the triggers can vary. That is, the ones we study most and are most common in hospitals and among doctors are those triggered by clinical death situations, as they are the patients we handle. But there are people who in normal situations can perfectly transcend to the other astral dimension. That is, I don't have any cases due to a special mystical situation you experienced with a priest. I have no such cases. However, there are countless people who possess this ability. Why do they have it? Because they are people who are already highly spiritually evolved. That is, they have had an easily maintained contact with their true identity. They are already very evolved individuals. They are very close to their identity and easily connect with their supraconsciousness. They do not need any physical death or special situations. There are people who naturally have astral travels. Some leave their bodies and take an astral journey.
That's true. I do it. And I also make what I call quantum jumps. That is, I move to different places and so forth. I do this while awake. I can do it even while walking.
In essence, tell you this with heartfelt sincerity, you are very fortunate. I assure you.
Well, not entirely, because, never.
Don't ever fear this. Nothing
No,
can
no.
happen to you whatsoever.
No,
Quite the
on the
opposite.
contrary, no fear at
These
all.
are experiences you will have, and nothing can happen to you. The link to the supraconsciousness is what defines our authentic self. While situations may surprise you, you might feel startled or even scared at times, but nothing happens at all. It is a blessing to connect with our true identity. It is what we are. The other is a costume we put on, and this costume shapes a dynamic from the ego. It's a non-identity. I refer to it as the non-self. And you connect with your true self. You are fortunate.
Thank you so much.
Hi,
Hi.
thanks.
Doctor, thank you very much. I had a more down-to-earth question, and it is there any scientific explanation for why it is so complex for us to reach the superconsciousness? Perhaps to shield us, or maybe because our body is designed to take us to this level of neutral reality? So, is there a scientific reason? Or have you found any scientific explanation for why it's so hard for most people to reach that superconsciousness?
The scientific explanation is essentially to discover what stops us from contacting our superconsciousness, our false identity, our ego. Someone who controls their ego. We can't eliminate the ego in human life. We will always have an ego. What happens is we need to strive to have a controlled ego, an ego that does not dominate our lives. As long as the ego dominates our lives, the ego is our false identity. It has an external material origin, depending on others' opinions. It is incomplete, ever-changing, constantly pursuing material goals, success, fame, wealth, power, control, which leads to negative dynamics, extreme competitiveness, envies, hatred, aggression, violence. All of this is conditioned by the ego. Why does the ego dominate? Because of the factors I've mentioned: society's ignorance, the attachment to the material, the fears, selfishness. All these aspects keep the ego predominant and dominant. We have the potential to connect with the superconsciousness, yes, if we are aware of our true identity. We must overcome the prevailing ignorance. How have we done it? By reading, studying, and searching for bibliography, meaning being mindful of our true identity. And what helps the most, I can assure you, is meditation. Meditation is the perfect way to gain control. Our body is capable of this. It is set up to connect. But we have an enemy that we must be aware of. And we must know how to fight against it, to keep it controlled and cornered. We cannot eliminate it, but we must not let it dominate us. And in our society, there is a focus on educating people in a neatly defined and constrained manner, well dominated by the ego, which is what interests them. To make you concerned with buying this, buying that, consuming here and there, All of this directs us where they wish. They limit us. So we must know our identity. How? As we've said, by controlling our ego. How? By being mindful, overcoming ignorance, and meditating. We possess tools. Meditate. It's crucial. When you meditate, you will notice that when you connect with your superconsciousness, you will notice the following. Firstly, there are changes in morphology. Important studies are being conducted with functional magnetic resonance imaging, showing that a person who meditates regularly has changes in the thickness of the gray matter in the frontal lobe. The hypothalamus is altered. It changes a lot in the memory region. Meaning, there are observable morphological changes, and from an emotional standpoint, you will see that first, you handle your emotions well. That is to say, when you are provoked, you no longer respond with aggression. You reflect. Insomnia vanishes, as does anxiety. Memory improves. Vitality improves. The desire to live. You feel a greater sense of vitality. And especially you control your emotions well. In other words, the emotional change is amazing. It's evident.